Rise up!
This is the Rise Up See Red podcast, all about the Arizona Cardinals and the NFL, featuring insider and outsider perspectives. Enjoy the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Now here are your hosts, Jess Root and Seth Cox.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome to the latest edition of the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. I'm your host, Jess Root from Cardswire.com, the USA Today NFL Wire site, home of the Arizona Cardinals for the NFL Wire. And this is episode 488. It is our third show of the week and our second Week 11 preview show. On Friday, the show dropped where Seth and I, my normal co-host, previewed the Cardinals Week 11 game this weekend against the Houston Texans in our preview picks and prop bets show. This is our enemy preview. He's not really an enemy. He's a close colleague of mine. Mark Lane joins me from Texans Wire, also one of the contributors over on the Touchdown Wire, which is our league-wide site that covers everything. Mark Lane, really well known around Texas sports out there. Mark, how are you? I'm glad to have you back on the show. We've done a couple of the season previews, and now I have you on to pick your brain about this fun matchup, which isn't a tank bowl anymore. That's what everyone thought it was going to be. It was the tank bowl when we were penciling this in Week 11, and both teams are looking at this game as, hey, maybe we win this one.
Yeah, I don't know about a tank bowl, even from a negative Texans perspective. More like, okay, how far away is the rebuild? That's like desert lights. Lights in the desert night sky, like, are we there yet? Are we there yet? But, you're getting closer.
And the Texans are much farther ahead than anyone thought they would be at this point.
Oh, I know. To go from rebuild to in the hunt, it's crazy, but really well-deserved for their fans, the ones that stuck it out the past 2 years. I didn't think that how the turntables would have happened as quickly as they did the last time these two met in regular season.
That's right. That was in 2021 at State Farm Stadium when the Cardinals beat the Texans 31-5, even though I think the Texans at one point had a 5-0 lead. And things kind of fell apart from there. Davis Mills did not have a fantastic game. J.J. Watt got hurt that game. Nonetheless, this is a matchup where they've only faced each other 5 times, and the home team has won every time. This is the third time in Houston. The Cardinals have never won there. But we want to talk about first what the Texans have done this season. And I think we have to start with the play of quarterback C.J. Stroud, because my co-host and I, Seth and I, were talking about the Texans, and we look at the talent. Now, there is some talent. It feels like the Texans are kind of the polar opposite of like the Atlanta Falcons, where the Atlanta Falcons have a whole bunch of really solid pieces and talent, but are held back by the quarterback position. And the Texans, while they do have some talent, there's not a bunch of guys, especially on offense, that you're like overly afraid of or that you expect to have to game plan for. But the play of Stroud as a rookie it reminds me of the way Andrew Luck affected the Colts his rookie year. He's having that sort of season. It's really something special to see. Did you expect Stroud to be this good this early?
No, I thought that this would come on the back end of the season after, taking some licks and having like a 3-interception game and getting, eaten alive by the Bengals and, that type of stuff. I expected to have these types of games or these stretches of games, but in December and the last 2 games of January, just because, I've learned it's slowing down, putting it together, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I expected this, but not now and not to accelerate the completion of the rebuild. I did not expect them to be competitive like this. And what's happened, though, is what Stroud can do when he does it well, they just keep adding on. They keep unlocking other portions of the playbook as opposed to just keeping him in this contained space. Oh, you can do that? All right, we're good. Let's move on to chapter 2. And that's why the Texans offense just has blossomed over the past few weeks.
So what is it that's made him, like, obviously he's progressed, but what is it about his play that is so good? Obviously, he doesn't turn the ball over, only 2 interceptions on the season. He's not only that, but he's volume passing in terms of yards, 15 touchdown passes. But what has been, do you think, has been the best part of what Stroud has done?
I would have to say his ball security and the way that he trusts the system, because there's ball security and then you never throw. But then there's ball security and just trusting what the coaches and what the scheme, what your teammates' jobs are going to be, and just going with it. And so it's really his maturity with ball security and also just his confidence in the system and chucking it.
As we look at other parts of the offense, so Dameon Pierce not having a bad year, but definitely not having the year that he had, at least the type of impact or efficiency he did as a rookie. They're still getting rushing. They still have a rushing attack. Obviously, Devin Singletary came in last week and had a big game, 150 yards on 30 carries, offensive player of the week for the conference. But, Devin Singletary only, entering week 9 had 209 total yards, rushing yards in the 8 previous games. What is the running game so far? Is there more to be had? What do you see from this rushing attack so far?
Well, they figured something out with Devin Singletary against the Bengals, but hey, Sam Hubbard was out, and that helps your run offense when the opponent's lead, rush defenders out. But anyway, yeah, Singletary, 30 carries, 50 yards and a touchdown. He has a career game. But the thing is, offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick told reporters this week that, Singletary had a big game, but what they are looking at is they don't want a bell cow running back that has, 30 carries every game. They don't want to wear a guy out. So they want production. And, Dameon Pierce, RB1 from the year before. But even so, they would like to spread the ball around to keep everybody fresh. Kind of like when you think back to the 49ers in 2019, or their running backs. Raheem Mostert, I think, got the most attention because he had the coolest sounding last name. But, it was really the way that scheme utilized everybody that is really what Houston is trying to emulate. So, yeah, it's Devin Singletary now. Maybe Mike Boone in December.
Could be, absolutely. In the past game, at least the receiving, Tank Dell having a fantastic rookie season. Nico Collins seems to come out of nowhere to be productive. That said, if you look at the receiving core, other than the promise of Dell as a rookie, you don't look at this receiving core and go, yeah, scary receivers, but they're still having production. What are they doing well, and what can they improve upon?
They've made it to where it's not about one guy. So, that's why some of this week it'll be Nico, and this week it'll be Noah Brown. Everybody can step up into everybody's role, so to speak. So when, oh my gosh, Nico Collins is out, we're all going to, you better buy storable food. The apocalypse is coming. But instead, Noah Brown steps up. You got Tank Dell out there. Dalton Schultz, the tight end, gets some passes. So it's really making it just about just a variety of functionality, and they've delivered.
Defensively, great run defense in terms of yards allowed per game and yards per carry. A little shakier when it comes to the pass defense. What do you make of the defensive side of the ball, which obviously would be DeMeco Ryans' bread and butter? That's the guy he is. What are they doing well, and what maybe we can point to why the pass defense is not as – they do give up a lot of passing yards. They have less. In fact, that on my prop bets, the one that I put for this game is to have Kyler do over 242.5, so 243 or more passing yards, when that has been done in 4 out of the last 5 games, the opposing quarterback to the Texans. But what are their defensive strengths, and where are there some struggles, and is it consistency?
It's basically the linebacking core. They've had some injuries. They really like Henry Tototo it's Henry Tuatua. There's too many O's and
apostrophes. There's 4 O's and 2 apostrophes in that last name. That's absurd.
I hear it every week. Mark Vandermeer says Tuatua, so there we go. But they really like him, but he's been injured. Denzel Perryman, they give him some, reps, and then he gets injured. So it's really just kind of been who's been available in the linebacking core. They like Tuatua, even though he's a rookie 5th rounder. He wears the headset. They like what he brings, but it's just kind of been the linebacking core's availability that has been a factor in whether it's positive or negative.
Coming up next on the Rise Up Zero podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. Let's look directly at this matchup. What will the Cardinals be able to do? What are the Texans going to try against the Cardinals? Matchups and keys. That's next on Rise Up Red. We're back on the Rise Up Red podcast, the best of Cardinals talk on the web. I've got Mark Lane, managing editor over at the Texans Wire, my sister site covering the Texans. Mark, thanks for being on. Of course, we talk as we look at this matchup, Cardinals versus Texans. I think, number one, even though at this part we talk about the quarterback matchup, but the quarterbacks are never on the field at the same time. But how do you look at this game now that Kyler Murray is back from his injury and a nice showing in his debut last week on a game-winning drive, looking like he didn't even get hurt in a new offense? What do you expect to see from the 2 quarterbacks in this matchup?
Yeah, I think that Murray could, they've definitely got respect for him. Matt Burke, the defensive coordinator, he was defensive line coach for the Cardinals last year. So he definitely knows. He talked about how, Murray, he's never out of it. So he'll drop back 20 yards to gain 10 yards. He's never, so you can't just, you got to go double time, basically, with Murray. And I think that, he could take advantage of Houston's aggressive front. And, if they're not disciplined enough, I think that he could take advantage of that. I also think that Stroud, his ball security is going to be secure. And if he's able to, have Houston on like a 7 to 8 play scoring drives, I think that that'll help Houston build a lead that then they can turn their defense over to get after Murray. So basically with Houston, it's, first to 20.
That's a good way to put it. I kind of expect this game to be a shootout, more or less based on the last 2 weeks that we saw in the Texans games, both against Cincy and against Tampa, where C.J. Stroud was fantastic at the end of those games. But looking at individual matchups, I'm really, really, really excited to watch is two top picks lining up against each other. Will Anderson against Paris Johnson. I know on the stats, like on the lineup, he'll line up primarily against the right tackle, correct? Does he switch sides much, or are we going to see a lot of Anderson versus Johnson in this game?
You'll see Johnson still go against a well-regarded pass rusher in Jonathan Grenard. So Johnson will be tested either way. So, because Grenard, he leads the team with 6 sacks. So, there's a little bit of, like you said, the draft intrigue. But, I think that you may be seeing more from Grenard. And that's still a very significant matchup because of where he leads the team in sacks.
Sheldon Rankins, number 2 on the team with 4 sacks so far this season. How do you see him impacting this game? And, depending on where he lines up, my co-host says what the Cardinals should do is run the ball at him, that he's been bad against the run. He's been good in pass rush and hasn't been on the field as much for run defense. He obviously is getting after the passer. Is there something to exploit there in the run game by running at Rankins? And the Cardinals are a team that likes to run the ball. So I'm really interested in this matchup in particular because the Cardinals have rushed for at least 100 yards, excluding that terrible game against Cleveland, every week since week 1. So out of 10 games, they've done it in 8. 8 of their last 9 games. I know the Texans' run defense, I think they haven't allowed 100 yards on the ground since week 2, I think it is. No, so the first 4 games, so their last 5 games, it's been 96, 89, 44, 41, and 66. That run game, where's the run game key going to come against? Where's the key to stopping the Cardinals' run going to come from?
I think that if they did run at Rankins, that might be a good idea. Hassan Ridgeway is injured, and he was really part of helping that run game, solidify. They've also got Malik Collins at defensive tackle. They probably should run at Sheldon Rankins, but it's really going to depend on just, I think, exploiting those linebackers. In the pass game and using the pass to kind of set up the run. But the thing is, you just can't abandon the run when going against the Texans. You still need to have it available so that you can be two-dimensional.
Right.
And, I think that if you can get Rankins and then now you're getting second level and now you're putting a hat on Christian Harris and, then Blake Cashman, then that really helps. And, if you can find a way to neutralize Blake Cashman and take him out of the action in the run game, that's really where it'll help Arizona.
Looking at the Cardinals' edge players against the tackles of the Texans, Laramie Tunsil, still a fantastic tackle. A little bit of problem with penalties this year. George Fant over right tackle. Be interesting to see what happens. I haven't looked at the injury report. Did he miss it? What's his game status?
No, he's good to go.
He's good to go. So how are the tackles holding up? Because the Cardinals have gotten, I think it is, a total of 15 sacks from their edge guys. None of them, like they've got 4 from Dennis Gardeck. They've got a number of guys that have, but I think it's with 4 guys, they've got 15 sacks from their edge players. How are the tackles holding up in pass rush so far?
Surprisingly well. I mean, Tunsil, yes. But in terms of George Fant, well enough that they said this left guard problem, Titus Howard, who's the right tackle, but he has versatility, go take care of left guard next to Laramie Tunsil. And it's worked. And it's only worked because George Fant has been competent enough to give them confidence to just let him maintain the right bookend. So Fant has done a surprisingly well job.
As we look at other matchups, the Texans receivers against the Cardinals secondary, the Cardinals have given up. I think they're the second worst team in pass defense in terms of yards, second worst in passer rating allowed at 101. They're not like the Cardinals defense for me is really curious because they do give up a lot of points, but at the same time, they do make things very difficult for opponents. They held Atlanta to like 254 yards. They held the Ravens to 268 yards, but still 31 points. Here's been the last 4 weeks of yardage allowed by the Cardinals: 318, 268, 326, 254. Those are really good yards allowed. And yet they've given up 23, 27, 31, and 20 in those games. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they just don't get off the field. But how do you feel the Texans receivers match up against the Cardinals secondary?
Yeah, I think that if you can get Tank Dell behind the safeties, then there'll be some opportunities. And really, they've found a way to exploit the center of the field, with crossing routes to Nico Collins. That's really one of their big things. Noah Brown is able to run crossing routes in that manner. But Collins gives you just such a target at 6'4". I think that if they're able to just stay on schedule and not get behind in the running game, then that's going to keep things formidable for Houston, when you've got a guy like Tank Dell challenging. So I think that it's just going to come down to just staying ahead of schedule in the execution, and then that will determine how Houston just really utilizes their pass game. But the thing is, they've not really been scared when it's come to, calling the plays, that go downfield or attack. Usually teams get kind of tentative when a secondary's doing real well or they get clamped. Houston, to their credit, will at least try.
Coming up next on the Rise Up See Red podcast, the best of Cardinals Talk and Web. Let's move to the segment where we make our predictions. Picks, predictions, and such. That's coming up next on Rise Up See Red. We're back on the Rise Up See Red podcast, best of Cardinals Talk on the Web, talking to Mark Lane from Texans Wire, managing editor over there, friend of the show. Mark, if we look at this game, the Texans are, well, depending on the sports book, I have them, they're favored by 4.5. The Cardinals have not been favored this season in any game. Before we get to our final score predictions, in terms of touchdown passes, how many touchdown passes do you think Stroud will have? How many will Murray get against the Texans defense?
I got Stroud for 2 through the air. I'm going to go with Murray getting 1 on the ground, 1 in the air.
Do you see any turnovers from either team?
Yeah, I think Murray gets fumbled, and I think Stroud throws another pick.
That would be something. Only 2 of those Stroud's thrown all season. Do you see a 100-yard rusher from either team in this game?
No.
And if you had to pick, who would be the leading receiver on of the game, either on either side?
I'm going to go with Tank Dell, 6 catches for 121 yards.
Ooh, that's a big game. And for me, I think I'm going to go with, I'm going to ride the hot hand, and I'll say that Dell probably does that. Maybe, say, 7 catches for 90 yards, and that Trey McBride, tight end for the Cardinals, goes for 7 catches for 88 and a touchdown. But yeah, sacks. How many sacks do you think that Stroud? Well, how many sacks do you think the Cardinals get? How many think the sacks the Texans will get in this game?
I think 1 for Houston, and then Arizona sacks Stroud 2 times.
Okay. I think it'll be probably 2 sacks for the Texans and 3 for the Cardinals, just kind of for the sake of things. And let's go with the big one. Your final score prediction. Who wins? What's the final score, and how does it happen?
So Houston, they basically jump out front, 10, 14 points, and they just, and then you have your witching hour activity that goes on, and the Cardinals, they get out front, maybe 17, 20 points. Then Houston pulls ahead early in the fourth quarter and convincingly wins 27-20.
Ooh. I've got this game. I've got the Cardinals covering, so the 4.5 point spread. I like a 3 or a 4 point game. Yesterday when I was talking to people, I picked 28-24, unsure which way it would go. I'm going to say that it's going to be 28-24 Texans, and it'll come down to another C.J. Stroud game-winning drive. I believe that both the Cardinals and the Texans will trade off go-ahead drives. The Cardinals will take the lead 24-21 with about 2 minutes left, and then Stroud does his magic again, and they come away with a 28-24 win. Either way, very exciting game to watch. It's a far more interesting matchup than anyone thought it would be. I know at least it's still important for the Texans because they're very much in the mix for the AFC South. The Cardinals, they're not in the mix of anything, but they're just trying to move forward and see the progress they make from Kyler Murray. And with that, we will wrap up this edition of the Rise of C-Red podcast, the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate the time. I know that you have a lot of hats and you keep yourself busy, so I appreciate the half hour that you're able to give me. As always, man, thank you so much. And for you can follow, okay, listeners, you can follow Mark. You're the Mark Lane on Twitter, right?
The real Mark Lane.
The real Mark Lane on Twitter, or X, if you call it that. But you can find his work on Texans Wire. You can find it on Touchdown Wire as well. Mark, I really appreciate the time. Thank you for coming on. And we will be back to talk with Seth. The next show will hit on Wednesday when Seth and I react to the game on Sunday. Thanks for listening. As always, we'll be back in again a few days.
Thanks for listening to the latest edition of the Rise Up C-Red podcast. Listen to previous episodes and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, Audioboom, or many other podcast platforms so shows are delivered directly to your mobile device. Please give the show a 5-star rating and always support the sponsors who support the show. We'll be back soon for the best hour of Cardinals talk on the web. Rise up, Red Sea, be Red, See Red, and of course, Rise up, See Red.